Well, thank you all coming, and this is another design series organized by IDSA Houston chapter. Thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy to introduce Mike Garman with us, and some of you already know him. Juniors, you probably remember him, one of our jurors for the chair project. Mike Garman graduated from the Rhode Island School of Design, and he has degree in architecture and fine arts. And he founded Garman Furniture in 2010. And his furniture has been awarded the Best Prototype Award in the Interior Design Show Toronto multiple years. And in 2018, Mike founded a Pretti.cool company with other 6 partners. And today he's going to talk about Pretti.cool as a company founded by a group of designers. It's a very good experience, and their company has been very successful. And their products sold in over 100 stores around the world, and have ongoing relationship with West Elm and Anthropology. And also their products sold in United States in the Nordstrom, Macy's, CB2, and Urban Outfitters. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mike. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Am I doing it? Oh, okay. Alrighty. Yeah, my name's Mike Garman. Five years ago or so, 6 of us got together and formed Pretti.cool. I thought instead of like just talking about design experience and design and how I think about designing stuff, although I'll try to do some of that also, I wanted to talk about actually why we started a business, some ins and outs of it, what it is to sort of have a small business like this. And just so no one ever told me any of that kind of stuff. So it took like 10 years just to figure out what you're actually supposed to do. And it's tricky sometimes and weird and lucky. So I wanted to just kind of go through that so you have a bit of an idea of what it would take to start a small business and sell home goods, because that's what we do. Before Pretti.cool, I started a company called Garman Furniture. Basically, I just like making furniture. I was going to make some cool stuff and give it a go. It's not that easy. I thought that basically you make some cool stuff, take it to maybe a big show, and some company will like it and pick it up and they'll manufacture it. That really isn't how that works. You might luck into that, but that'd be like winning the lottery probably. So most of the time people manufacture their own stuff and then companies will then buy it from you. That way they have no actual risk in it and you have all the risk. So that's not something I ever knew. So starting off, I was making expensive, wooden furniture, and that's kind of what I did. This was a bench that I made. This is one of the things that won a Best Prototype Award in Toronto at their furniture show. So it's like the Toronto version of what's the one in New York? ICFF, yeah. So it's like the Toronto version of that. And it's also, this is it in oak. There's also randomly 2 of these in the City Hall in Houston. I won some public art thing and it's listed as public art, which I think is weird, but anyway, this is a mirror that I made. This is another one of the things that won in Toronto a different year. It's a piece of felt that's just looped around and a little groove and it holds the mirror in place. That's the first thing I ever got into a large company. CB2 picked that up for a little while and bought a bunch. And it didn't do that very well. Didn't do very well. Like someone got a bad review, which was like, it's not as big as I thought it was. You're like, and the dimensions are on there. I mean, I don't know what to, I don't know what to tell you, but it was a first experience of working with like a company like that. And They vary, but it is, I mean, you get like 150-page manual of all the things you can and can't do. They were like, you have to take this and get it certified that it's whatever. And I'm like, look, this is natural organic felt in a mirror. Do I need to take this to like, you know, different companies to certify that it's not going to kill anybody or anything? And they're like, no, but you know, that takes like a bunch of emails. Anyway, I mean, to the point where like you box it and they're like the individual box of the mirror then has to fit in a master container. Only 6 of those boxes can fit in that bigger box with a ½ inch around it. And I had a box that had 3/4 or an inch around all sides, and they like yelled at me for it. Like, you know, you're like, well, I'm not gonna go buy a custom box to try to fit. Anyway, they were a little bit like difficult to work with, but it was a learning experience and something that is now a little bit old hat. But I mean, it's just, you're super happy to get into a store like that, and it's really nice, but there's a whole lot of like rigmarole with dealing with it. A rocking chair I made also, and I'll talk a little bit more about photography and stuff, but like this was when I was shooting my own photography and figuring out how to make it look okay in Photoshop. So that's like photographed in my driveway and then Photoshop to look not like it's photographed in my driveway. And then I went to a cool space and shot some more of my stuff. So basically I had trouble because everything I made was really expensive. It took me a long time to make it, and it's hard to sell something that's expensive. I got into a couple little galleries here and there. I've sold some of it. I've been published a lot. I mean, lots of different magazines like New York Times, all that kind of stuff, but none of, and won some of those awards, but none of those actually ever resulted in a lot of sales, which is another thing that I didn't really understand. I was like, oh man, yeah, I got published. And I mean, it's like a great thing. I'm happy that that happened for me. It's like a little notch on things, but like now I want money. I want things to actually sell so I can keep living and doing what I want to do. So, yeah, so basically what happened was I pigeonholed myself into this, like my company was called Garman Furniture. So the name of it sort of denoted that it was furniture and it was my name. And I was just doing this like wooden expensive furniture. I had a friend named Catherine, who's part of my company, Pretti.cool now. She had a like menswear. She also went to RISD and she did fashion design. She does men's stuff. So she did ties and things, but we both felt like we were like in this very specific place where we couldn't expand or do fun things or change what the direction of our company was. So we just started getting to talking and we're like, it'd be fun if we like, you know, try to start something new and do fun, crazy, weird stuff, whatever we want. And we invited like 20 people that we knew in Houston to a bar. And we're just like, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing. Anyone interested? And it turned out there were 6 people that were interested in it. And we started having a few meetings and just sort of just generally talking about stuff. And it got to the point where we decided that those 6 of us wanted to start a business. We had no name yet. We didn't really have a lot. I had been switching over to some concrete stuff, some smaller things, because of the fact that the furniture was big, clunky, took me a long time to make. So I had already made what would be our soap dish, an incense holder, a trivet. So I had a couple of items already, but you know, we just didn't have much. We had a jewelry designer in the group, we had a photographer in the group, a painter, who's also a lawyer, which is helpful. Me being furniture and product, and another U of H grad who is no longer with us, but he did ceramics. And he was kind of the fun, quirky person who made shoe planters. I'll show you some. So he helped out a lot with our like funky stuff, and I was more like sort of very simple geometry. It's like your first semester of actual ID where you have your shapes. It like that's basically how I design. I don't get past your first semester. So basically we had Pinterest boards and we would just sit around and chat, and a lot like you guys ideate and try to figure out what your project's going to be like. We just started showing pictures to each other and trying to get a general vibe and feel. Nothing that we would specifically go after, but just to try to figure out we're all on the same page. We're all sort of thinking about this kind of stuff. So personally, I'm like or I was a black and white gray, like I have a degree in architecture, so pretty gray black, like one of those kind of people. But over the years, I've embraced color, and now I like it as much as I like anything else. And it's weird to not think about color. So color is one of the things that everyone else brought than me, but this is like a Memphis design. Is one of the type of things, if you can Google it later. But it's rad. We really fell in love with how those shapes and stuff work. We're also generally a bunch of 90s kids. So Saved by the Bell became like kind of our like mantra. Like we're just like, yeah, this funky Memphis design stuff, bold colors, and kind of this weird, funny 90s vibe to it, which is what we tried to go for. So as things progress throughout over the years, you really do narrow down and get more focused on the identity and whether things work or not with your brand and how to push that and how that evolves. But in the beginning, it's a lot of just hanging out. We hang out every week, once a day, every week for like months, just talking and trying to figure out what we wanted to do. We'd all throw out ideas. Some of those had to do with our name. And one night we were just like, I think I said something like, it's like, oh, that's prettily or something. Anyway, we just kept kind of saying pretty cool. And then at some point, someone's like, what about pretty cool? And then we're like, can you get a domain name? And we couldn't, but we found out that there's a .cool, which, you know, was like rad. So then we got pretty.cool. And we had to do the I because someone had Y, but you know, it's close enough. And I think that, to be honest, I think our name helps us out quite a lot. But so, yeah, so just to talk about that, like our identity, how we sort of like thought about stuff, think about things and move along. Even these older photos, it's like the colors and vibe of it more than, you know, necessarily the what it's portraying. We also love Lisa Frank and Trapper Keepers. So we love her too. So just, you know, throw some of that stuff out there. And, you know, old school Nintendo guns and stuff like that. So, and again, that's like a room of Memphis, which if we could turn anything into stuff, we'd probably go that route. So yeah, so when we started off, we had, you know, just like I said, just a few products. These were some of them. This is our soap dish. It's interesting, certain people, sometimes it's like when we sort of are thinking about what we're gonna make, sometimes it's us being like, we personally need a soap dish, or we try to think about what we actually want or what people might want. I go on other, like I'll go on West Elm's website and just see what they sell. And I'm like, do I sell that? And if the answer is no, I'll think about whether or not I have an idea for it. And if I do, I'll try to make it. Other times people talk to you about stuff. I don't know if you guys know Man Ready Mercantile. It's a store in the Heights. If you don't, you like manly mercantile-y things. It's a cool place. There's a guy named Travis. He runs it. He has a studio space across from us where he makes candles and leather goods and stuff like that. But I had a conversation with him before Pretti.cool, and I was like talking to him, and he wanted an incense holder. And so I was like, all right, well, that's fine. I went home and designed an incense holder, and this is what I came up with. He didn't like it. And I'm pretty sure that if I had this as a class project, I would get, I don't know, C minus. Like, it doesn't hold any of this, doesn't catch any of the stuff, you know, and everything. But I've sold probably 20,000 of these things. So it's one of those kind of silly conversations that it's like, all right, well, yeah, but not everything has to have all of the functions. And this is one of those things where it's a pretty object that most of the time isn't actually being used as an incense holder, but it's a pretty thing on your table. It doesn't take up much room. So instead of trying to make a large one, we went this route. So the funny thing is, like, someone can, you know, tell you that, introduce you to a product, right? Like an incense holder that I've never used incense. I've never thought about making an incense holder, but someone else introduces you to that, and then you make one, and it turns out to be this whole, like, this and our soap dish are our two best-selling things. So it's funny that, like, we also make incense now for it, and so it's just an interesting thing. Like, someone else tells you something, you design something that you wouldn't have ever thought about. So some of it's that, some of it's like, you know, we just randomly think up stuff that we don't have yet, and we make it. Like, we didn't have a paper towel holder, so we made a paper towel holder. Oh yeah, there's a hole. Yeah, it's hard to see. Maybe in the lilac-y one up, right? Yeah, there's a hole. It does. It holds the incense stick. It's just that, you know, if it's not a perfectly straight stick or the wind blows, it will fall out. So, and we get emails, you know, it just didn't catch everything. And I'm like, when you looked at this, what made you think that that was going to catch everything? Those are the conversations we have with ourselves. We just say, oh, I'm, you know, sorry, get a straighter stick. No, we don't say those things. Yeah, and also, like, when we first started off, I was only making the non-terrazzo stuff, so the smooth faces, and then I started making the terrazzo, which is the glass. It's the same concrete glass, like a recycled glass is added to it, and then it's etched or sanded off the fine, very first outer layer, so it exposes the aggregate. And the terrazzo is by far outsells anything that's not terrazzo. And so it's been a good thing for us. By the way, we used to make, I'll tell you a little bit more about candles and packaging and stuff, but we used to make candles, which is a disaster. That's one of our candles. It was one of the first things we made, because we were like, basically like, we sell to a lot of stores at wholesale, which I'll talk about a little bit more too, but they'll reorder if they're selling our stuff, which is great. But individuals come to us, they're only going to buy one thing once, but if candle, they can continually rebuy it, which works with our incense. But candles, you have a clear glass like that, getting all of the wax to settle perfectly without air bubbles or things in it is very difficult. And then the glass breaks sometimes when being shipped, and the oils that go into making, like, essential oil, like all natural soy wax candle, is like $300 for this much oil, you know, and you're like, okay. So anyway, candles didn't work out. That brings me to some of the earlier packaging. When we first started off, we didn't have any packaging. So, except for the candle. And what we did was we bought a white box and got a sticker. And it looks pretty bad. But none of our products had boxes. We just didn't need it. It's expensive. Like, we had to order some more boxes. Like, we just got them in like last week. But I mean, every time we order boxes, it's $10,000 to $20,000. I mean, is not a cheap thing. You get price break discounts when you go, you know, larger. So it's more advantageous for you to buy like 2,000 or 5,000 boxes of something than it is to buy like 100 boxes of something. But nevertheless, we just didn't. It was expensive. We got into Nordstrom. I think it was like after I taught, I think like that year, we got a call from Nordstrom. I'll go into some trade shows, but we were at a trade show, and we got a call from Nordstrom, and they were like, "We're gonna place an order," and we're like, "Cool." And it was a $80,000 order, and it was like 400 sets of coasters, which there's 4 coasters to a set, so it's like 1,600 coasters and 400 or 500 of 8 different other products. And I was still kind of having a job, something else, and I was like, "Oh crap!" So that was like changed it into this is my full-time job, and it was just a nightmare for 8 weeks. And with those things, also, they don't pay you right away, so they have like a net 45. Most bigger places have at least a net 30, which means you deliver them the object, they have 30 to 45 days to then pay you what they owe you. So basically the concept for them is they have the buying power and you want to sell them, but they could sell enough of that to pay you back in that 30 days. So they never really out money. But it's tough on me because I have, let's say with that Nordstrom order, I have 2 months of constantly making and buying all the materials to make. Then I have to wait, then we ship it. Then I have to wait another 45 days before I ever get any money. So it's a lot of like, make sure you can pay for everything and managing your funds. But once the train starts rolling, you know, then everything's fine because you'll get money from something else later on and it's good. But in the beginning, like that one, that was hard to pull off. But it was a great thing because it pushed us into being for real. My point though, with all of that was we had to have boxes for every one of those products that we sold at Nordstrom. So we started off with boxes for those specific products. This is going to be a little disjointed, my bad. This was the pump. This is a ceramic Reebok pump, shoe planter, which is from Wyatt Little, which we went here. But this is one of those things that sort of helped define we have all of the stuff that I was making, which was like simple geometric shapes. And then this is the fun and quirky things that like added to that. So a lot of the times what happens is you make these funky things like this or a concrete banana, which I'll show you. I mean, you make that stuff and people talk about it and then they go buy your soap dish, you know? So it gets people to talk about you and think about you, but then they'll end up still going to just go buy the soap dish. We made it gold. It cost like $800. Someone bought it. It's crazy. This is these are like little totter planners. So one of our parts of our logo is a little half circle. So we integrate half circles into stuff as much as we can and a squiggle. But the photo kind of just shows how we think about like little funky, little fun, little clevery way of like showing the photo helps us out with how we portray ourselves. Some coasters, early days. That's a tea light holder. That was a dismal. I thought that was like nice when I made it, and it was just bad. We don't make that anymore. So not everything works out. So yeah, I wanted to talk about trade shows. So I want to talk about some of the things how we actually get work. Because I said that like being published doesn't help. Like bloggers or Instagram or podcast people, that does help. So you want, like, I want that. I don't want to be published in an actual magazine, something like that. I mean, I do, but that doesn't help me as much. What also helps me is these shows that we do, they're trade shows. This is the first one I did ever with my furniture company. This is called Wanted Design. It was at the same time as ICFF. I picked this one because it was just a smaller venue and it was kind of trendier and cooler at the time. But like, I had to make all that junk, right? You have to I brought it all from Texas, you make it. And for example, that's like a 12 by 12 foot booth, something like that. That was like $10,000 for 3 days. So it's kind of a big investment to like do it. But if you're starting off and you're making products, furniture, whatever, and you want to sort of see what's going on, I would recommend at least going to some of these shows, walking around, spending some time there, seeing what people are gravitating towards, and seeing what's current and cool and how people actually build out their booths, what that looks like. And then they'll have a better idea of, you know, what you would do in those situations when you're doing it. Because it's just this huge unknown until you actually are there. And it's less frightening once you've done it once. So the weird thing about Want to Design, ICFF, those type of shows is that you're getting a lot of, there's public that comes to it. You're getting a lot of like press and designers. So like interior designers and people like that, and some stores, but no one's buying anything. You're just showing your stuff and hoping that people talk to you later about it. And that's the whole thing I didn't really understand. I thought, and I was like, oh, so these didn't actually make me much money. It was like, got me some press, people talk about you and things like that, but like, it didn't actually result in any money. This is New York Now. So these are this is the first show we went to. Is Pretti.cool. This is in the Javits Center, which is in New York. It's their convention center. It's 2 floors of this. There are thousands of booths. People erect an entire kitchen, living room stuff. They must spend like $500,000 on just their booth. Not to mention the fact that you have to have, like, it's a union thing. So if you do anything, you have to pay a union member $200 an hour. Wi-Fi costs $2,000, by the way, for 3 days. So our booth here is about $5,000 and it's the smallest. So that's the Javits Center. These are just some pictures of what everything's like, right? Obviously, the Swarovski people have a bit more money than I do. So Jonathan Adler. So there's a lot of big names, and then there's a lot of small people too. This is our booth. That's me. So this is our first booth, and you can see kind of how we laid it all out. Not a lot of products, but not bad. And it was a good show. It paid for itself. It more than paid for itself, and it got us leads. So basically, on these type of shows, it is not open to the public. You can't just walk in and see this. You have to have a store, and it's all stores. So people, they'll just come up to you, and there's like a whole lot of lingo you don't know about, like, you know, like things like net 30 and drop shipping and all kinds of stuff. And you just sort of have to like be like, oh yeah, no, I know what this means. And you know, you learn it all, but everyone wants numbers. And so we went from pop-up shops, which are like tented booth things in Houston and Austin, stuff like that, where you're selling to the public, to this. And everyone just wants numbers in wholesale, which is like half and half. It's like 50-50. So they want your wholesale price. So you know your prices in the actual retail price. And you're having to like do 50-50 math on everything. And then you're like, they're like, do you even know what this is? And you're like, yes, I know. I mean, I made it. I know what it is, but you know, so it's a learning process and an interesting thing. And it's like a lot of like every once in a while, someone comes by, people like just peek in and glare at you. And you're like, well, okay. I mean, I didn't do anything bad, but this is a very weird environment, but you know, steadily you do get a lot of people coming in and placing orders. So they place orders right then. And then you go home and fulfill them, ship them out. So these shows, you actually make money at the show, which is what I like, and more helpful for our business. So some of my team members, and this is us kind of putting it all together. This is so that was New York Now. Then there's this show called Shop Object, which is what we do now. And it's like the cooler kids. So New York Now's got everything. There's like a diamond place in the bottom and kids' toys and oriental rugs and anything that you can imagine that ever touches your house. That's what New York Now is. Shop Object is just basically modern design things, so we fit in well with that, and it's a lot smaller. That was the first time we showed the concrete banana, and we did the whole Art Basel thing, which we thought was funny until it fell off the wall and broke two things. But duct tape doesn't always work very well. So similar layout and stuff like that, but these are some of the newer products. But this is generally how we tend to lay our booth out. We try to make everything pretty accessible, showcase things, take time, but it doesn't need to be too complicated. This is this year. This was like in August. Didn't realize that they changed the walls to particle board from what they said was Luan or plywood, and all the shells fell off the wall and broke quite a few things midway putting it up. And then I had to try to find hollow wall anchors in some hardware store in New York and come back and remount them all. So that was fun. But that gives you an idea of there's some anvils and pipes that Studio Ludo made for us. It's pretty awesome. You can see the person to the right, they've got all this super hand-blown glass stuff. So I was super worried about putting stuff up on the wall and it falling down and breaking their stuff. So yeah, so that's the trade show thing. That's the thing that's worked the best for us. The other things that have worked well are Fair. It's a wholesale website, so you just put your stuff up there, and other companies come in and stores come in and can place orders, and it's super simple. They get a percentage though. So like I said, if you're selling something, the retail price is $100. I'm wholesaling it generally for $50. So the store is paying me $50 for it. Fair takes a 25% cut the first time someone orders, and then 15% cut every time after that. So you have to make sure your numbers work when you're doing that, if you're going to go on certain places like that. Although the nice part about Fair is that if you make the contact, like I meet someone in New York and I have their business card, I just enter that in. And if that person ever makes a sale, a purchase through Fair, it's a 0% commission. So it works out really well. And we get a lot of business for it. So it's kind of a volume game if you're going to do wholesale. West Elm is our biggest backer company. They sell almost everything we make now, which is kind of crazy. We do a drop ship relationship with them. What that means is they get an order on their web. They just put the images up on their website. Someone orders it from West Elm. They send us a packaging slip in an email, like this is what this person bought, and we fulfill it. We put it in a box. We print out their packaging, stick it on there, and ship it out. We don't pay for the shipping; they do. Because we do that way, because that's the relationship, and we negotiated 55% with them instead of 50%. So we get a little bit more money because they have less risk and they don't really have much in it. As opposed to Nordstrom, who actually bought all the physical products, and anything that didn't sell would have to go to their Nordstrom rack or I don't know, wherever. So West Elm is wonderful. So for example, West Elm and CB2 are competitors very directly. When I sold something on CB2, it was just called felt mirror. West Elm, everything that they list on us says Pretti.cool and then a list of the description items. So it drives a lot of business to us. So everyone goes on to West Elm, they look at our stuff, it says Pretti.cool, then they come to us sometimes and buy it directly from us, or at the very least, they know who we are because of that. So, and they're great. They also, I'll talk about it a little bit more too, but they've asked us to now sort of design certain things for them, or we have a good enough relationship with our buyers to be like, well, what are you looking for? Because you want to get to the point where you have a relationship with a large company like that, where you can say, hey, well, what are you looking for? They told us we're looking for kitchen and bathroom. And if I was starting off, I would design for kitchen and bathroom. Like that's where people buy. And so because of that, we designed a toothbrush holder for the bathroom. And again, not something I would have potentially thought of. Like, you know, I'm a dude. I just kind of like throw my toothbrush wherever. It's like whatever. It's probably gross, but you know.
Ordering one of your
Are you really? Right on. It's become one of the best-selling items that we have, and it's just a real simple product, but wouldn't have thought of it or done it without having that conversation. They also, and I'll show a little bit more of it later, but they also came to us and wanted us to design a menorah, and we said, we'll think about it, and we did, and it's also become a really good selling thing, and it's gotten a lot of good press. We were at the show in New York a couple months ago. The menorah and our new garbage collection, which I'll show some, is the two things that got the most like attention. Bulletin is another thing like Fair. It's a wholesale website. We also sell a clock through Anthropology, which again is a bit of a pain, but they're like, won't give us any pre-advanced, you know, that they're going to actually place an order, and then they place an order for like 150 clocks, and they're very difficult to make. And I'm like, well, it's going to be like 2 months. And like, we don't wait this long for anyone. I'm like, well, if you want it, you're going to wait 2 months because it's not going to happen before then. And so far they keep reordering, which is nice. But with packaging and stuff, they're another person that like that has to evolve. We have packages, boxes for everything. I'll show you some. They all have UPC codes on them, which you have to buy, you have to pay for. And then Anthropology, we have to have made in the USA stickers in certain locations. So a lot of the things that you end up putting on stuff all happen to come because other people are asking for them and demanding them. One of the things I wanted to do too is just walk you through one of the sort of, to get a little bit of design process in there. One of the processes of stuff that we design. So this is the menorah I was talking about for West Elm, and we sell it also. They're just the person asked us for it. When we first started doing it, like I didn't actually know how big they were. I thought that they took, I've only seen pictures, I thought they took regular sized taper candles, and I like plotted it out. It was like 19 inches long was like this littlest I could make. It's like, there's no way. And then I started doing all the research on it and what was acceptable and not acceptable. And it turns out that like they're basically a little bit taller than birthday candles, so they're quite small. So it shrunk everything down to more like 9 to 12 inches, which was like way more manageable. And it turned out most of them had one elevated spot. It didn't matter where that spot was, but one of the spots was elevated. And it has to do with the fact that that's the first candle, and it's the one that they use to light the other candles. I'm pretty sure I could do that. Yeah, okay. So I am old and I like, I mean, I have a shop, and so I do some sketches, but instead of like doing everything on the computer and rendering it, I like just messing around with wood and kind of sculpting it that way and seeing it in real life, because things just sort of look different on the computer sometimes, and it's nice to really get a feel of how it's going to work. So here's are some of the early, just quick thoughts that I was messing around with. I wanted to keep it pretty simple, so those are a few of them. I didn't like any of them except I like this one. And we started looking at it and we're like, yeah, it looks a lot like an arc. And it's a little too boaty, but I was like, maybe it'll look better in concrete, because like quite often something will look a lot better in like a terrazzo than it does in like wood. And so I was like, well, all right, I'll do that. So then I made it in concrete, and I was like, it still looks like a boat. So it needed something, and started back to the original, like, you know, brass menorahs where each one has its own, I don't have a picture of it, unfortunately, but you know, each one has its own like little arm that comes out. And so I took that and then started doing that, but graphically on top. And it sort of got this like Art Deco-y kind of hard, showing of my words aren't working anymore, but yeah, you get it, like that, right? Like, yeah, that. And I still put that little half circle on there, and I was like really digging that in the beginning, and then I was like, I don't like that. And Catherine was like, why don't you just make that square? And I was like, why don't I just make that square? It would look a lot better. So then I sanded that off and cut another little piece and stuck it on. And it turned out to be what we ended up with. So, and then that specific thing just gets sanded a bunch and bondoed and whatever. And then the mold is made, the silicone mold is made from that. And then we did it in our blue, our white, and our black. So, it's a process exactly like what you guys do all the time, and you just work through it. And I have a team, the rest of my team, I just take things to them in their varying stages. I'm like, you guys hate this? And sometimes they're like, this is like awful, and sometimes it's not bad. So yeah, it's a process, and that's kind of how we do stuff. I sort of have random ideas, like I'm gonna make a Coke can that's crinkled, and then they're like, dude, I don't know. And you try it out, and then it looks kind of good, and you're like, well, we'll try that. I'll go back to some of the packaging stuff. Like I said, this was the first packaging ever. It's terrible. Our scents are called, we have 4 scents, and they're in our incense. They're called Get a Room, No Problemo, Ain't My First Rodeo, and something else. Anyway, they're fun, right? So again, we try to like make things a little bit more playful than usual. Oh, that was the candle for that box. This was our first tin. So this is our incense cones. This was our first attempted thing. We had to buy these tins from China, unfortunately, which is where you pretty much have to get all your packaging from anyway. But we had to buy like 5,000 of them. But each tin is black, and we had to get a sticker and stick that sticker on each one. But each tin has each tin, wrong way. Each tin has a different color, and that color is coordinated to like what the scent is. And then recently we ran out of tins, so we had to like upgrade our packaging. And so we've gone to this. So the evolution of all these things, we have a little bit more money to spend on this stuff, which is helpful, but I think we've like continually try to up our game, like make things a little bit nicer and better and more on brand as things go along. But the evolution of it is an interesting thing. So these are super rad. We sell Palo Santo too, which is just, sticks of wood that you burn. It's really nice smelling actually. And it wards away ghosts and things, which is like a, side benefit. Brooklyn and just bought like 200 of those. So that's the concrete banana. We do it in normal banana, we call ripe, and then we call that one banana bread. And so I thought it would be funny to make a banana, because we kept doing silly things on Instagram, and we were like, oh, we could just put a banana in all of our photographs for scale. So like I made a banana for scale for Instagram photos, and we went to a meeting and I just left it out on the table, and no one knew that it wasn't a real banana. And then I had to like point it out, and then they loved it. And I'm like, dang it, now I'm making bananas. And they're not easy to make, but they've been a really good product for us. They sell quite well, which is remarkable. Museums love them. So like we're in several museum stores and they love them. Jeff is one of my partners. He follows this like finance podcast, and he saw the guy's name and he bought one like 2 weeks ago, and Jeff was like, oh, awesome, this guy bought it. And I was like, is that like a breach of, anyway. And then they posted about us and started talking about the bananas, and then all their friends bought bananas. So it's a weird thing, but it's one of those things where you get a lot of attention for. And you bring it to like little pop-up shows and everyone wants to touch it and look at it, and then they go buy your soap dish, right? Or they buy the banana sometimes too. But I mean, it's on the fun side of things. The reason I put it in packaging is because we have a friend of ours who's a graphic designer make these little stickers, like a Chiquita thing for us. So even on something as simple as a little banana, we try to like do a little fun thing like that. The other thing I wanted to talk about was in the beginning, 2 of our members were both photographers, and now one of them isn't with us anymore, but one of them still is a photographer. So selling everything mostly online, not in person, photography is probably the most important thing that we do besides the actual designs. It conveys the vibes that you want, the type of places that you want it to be seen in, your sort of overall concepts and stuff like that. And it's what sells it or doesn't sell it. You have to always have white background photos for your website. For people like West Elm, a lot of like print people will only want you to have a white background, but most of the stuff we show is all in scene stuff, like in houses. There's a word that I'm looking for that I can't figure out in my head right now, but that. So, you know, instead of just having that on a white background, you know, we try to show things in their environments. It makes it more tangible, also shows scale well. Sometimes you just can't understand what the scale of something is. And then you get people being like, I thought this was going to be a lot bigger. And you're like, I don't know how you thought that. This is our doorstop. Funny thing about the doorstop, we made that, this is a collaboration. I wanted to like with one of the other partners. She does our jewelry, and she also does like a lot of like rope type of work. So it was a collaboration between us, which I really liked. And we were like, this thing's cool, and we didn't sell any. Like I think like the first 2 years we sold like 3, maybe, like no one bought them. Then West Elm picked it up, and we sell like 5 a week. So it's an insane difference as to just like, we were like, we're not going to keep selling this. Like, this is just a waste of time. And then the right person picks it up and puts it in. Some people buy 10 at a time on West Elm. I mean, I don't know if they have like a hotel, or they're like a lot of doors that need to stay open, or where they're at with it, but you know, right. It's also a convenient weapon in the time of intruders. Right. But anyway, it's an interesting thing that just like in certain, you know, we don't have the following to sell some of our things, but other people do. So we've also started designing for like a West Elm. Like, we don't think we could sell this, but we think West Elm could. And so we've sort of started doing some of that as well. But yeah, so again, like, you know, we just try to have fun with stuff and put them in interesting situations. That's the clock that those are the 2 clocks Anthropology sells, which are not easy. Some people like do little blog posts and are like, don't spend, I don't know how much they are, on Anthropology for this. I'll show you how to do it in the backyard, and like a bucket. And I'm like, good luck. This is the new garbage stuff that we made. So like I said, I crinkle Coke cans up, and I was like looking at, I'm not the first one to ever do a Coke can that's crinkled. There's several ceramic people that have done it over the years. So this isn't like a fully new concept or anything, but concrete gets a lot better registration and detail than ceramics does. And so They're like perfect. I'm happy with how they've all come out. They've been selling really well. They're all little bud vases, so they all have little channels in them, so you can put, you know, flowers and stuff in them. And it's another thing we found, that we have, like, the banana doesn't have a function. It's like called a paperweight. But if you have a function, even if you call it a paperweight, of course, we could have like a million paperweights, but if you have a function to it and it's a bud vase, it sells much better than if it's just a Coke can that's crinkled and looks cool. So we try to have a small function in all of the items if we can. That way, that function makes it valuable for us. So we do it in a bunch of different colors, most of our terrazzo colors. Yeah. So sometimes we get all kinds of things, but there's a photographer and she was like, hey, I'm starting off, I think she's in LA or something, and I need a portfolio. I'll shoot photos of your stuff. I like your stuff. It fits along with what I like. And if you send me all your stuff, I'll just shoot it for free and give it back to you. And we were like, yeah, we'll do that. That's cool. And they are like some of our favorite photos. So sometimes it's really good, even if you have your own photographer and stuff like that, to hire other people to like outside look at your brand and do work for you. And that way, you know, you get other pairs of eyes, because like we've been looking at this for 5 years, and you know, you get pigeonholed into like what you think of stuff. So having other people come in and take looks at stuff is good. Wine coasters. Also didn't sell any of those till, huh? Didn't you? Oh, there's one in here. And then, you know, presenting it, like she did that too, you know, like we didn't necessarily think to do that kind of thing. So, but just fun ways of doing stuff. And again, I was having a conversation with Estelle, who's our intern. Thanks, Estelle. Anyway, you go to pop-up shops and pop-up things and stuff like that, and you have like random people and like, what's that? And you're like, it's a catch-all. You know, you put whatever you want in it. Well, what can you put in it? I'm like, well, whatever you want to put it. Anything that will fit in there. You can do that. Well, what? So then you got to put stuff in them, so people are like, oh, you can put things in there. You know, so you got to like show people like, hey, you put your keys in there. And they're like, all right, cool, I can put my keys in there. I need a place to put my keys. So, you know, it's a constant battle. I think that's the last slide I brought. But yeah, I mean, that's the basics. Is I wanted to try to walk through what it's like, what works for us, sort of some of the processes we go through and stuff like that. Hope that wasn't too disjointed or anything, but happy to answer any questions or talk or whatever you guys want. So.
Perfect timing, Mike. Thank you. Now, yeah, any questions to Mike?
No? Cool.
How do you manage your partners, like doing different kinds of work?
At this point in time, I'm the primary designer and maker. We have, yeah, that too. They do. We have a weird system. Like, I get paid. Let's say that I generally get paid 25% per item. It isn't always like this, but this is a good example. So I'll get paid 25% per item that I make. Pretti.cool makes 25% of that when we wholesale it. Pretti.cool makes 75% of it if we don't wholesale and sell it directly through our website. So I get paid when we sell things. I do it that way because I'm an owner and I can take the risk on that kind of stuff. I wouldn't if I wasn't the owner. But we have Jeff, who's our photographer. He also does all of the packaging. So I make everything in the Woodlands. I bring it up once a week to we have a studio in Houston, and it gets packaged there and sits on the shelf, and then he fulfills. We have another employee there too. And I have an employee that helps me make stuff. And they just package everything and fulfill everything. And he deals with all the, you know, customers and stuff like that. his wife, Catherine, who was is the fashion designer. She designs our website. She does all of the books. We have a bookkeeper too that helps us with all that kind of stuff. So
Were they also doing their own thing?
she's a teacher also, but Jeff is full-time with us also. So there's 2 of the owners are full-time, 2 don't do much of anything, which is, you know, their choice. They're not getting paid either. So like I mean, they get payouts if we pay out like, you know, we pay out some profits every year. So they get that. But they'll come to shows and help out in meetings and stuff like that, but they don't do a lot of active stuff. But yeah, I've found that one of the reasons I wasn't as successful by myself is that I don't like doing the businessy stuff and I don't like managing all of those aspects. I like designing stuff and I'm good at that. And so I have other people that do that. And we have ups and downs. Like I said, we start off with more people and now we have, I think we start off with 7 people and we have 5 now. For varying reasons, it just didn't work out. It wasn't like malicious or bad or anything. It's just different ideologies or ways that we do stuff. So, but you know, it's like any other relationship. Sometimes things are good and bad. And, you know.
Questions? Yeah, George has a question. Just one more question I can have, George.
We started off with those little pop-up shops around Houston. That got us some income and a little bit of like everything. But basically, we just made some Instagram accounts, did that. But it wasn't until we did the shows in New York that we got anywhere. So we decided to just spend a bunch of money, and like the shows in New York cost about $5,000 to do a small booth like you saw for 3 days.
Sorry.
Well, maybe you have George. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
You want to? Yeah, I think it's better for you just to ask your question.
Oh, okay. I mean, I don't know if you can see
I
it
can
there
hear
in the chat.
Oh,
Yeah. I don't know if you can see it in the chat. Do you see it in the chat?
No, that part of the computer's on, but I see it now.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was just wondering about your that goal.
Just heads in the corner. Sorry, what's the
Yeah.
question?
No, I was wondering about the gold Reebok shoe. Is it actually made out of gold or is it just painted to look like gold?
It is both sort of. It's ceramic, so it's made out of it's not I think he used like just a normal it's not porcelain, it's just like a longhorn or something like that. Earthenware. It's an earthenware ceramics with they have gold lusters, so it's actual gold, but it's a luster, so it's a thin coating of gold all over it. So
Okay.
not solid gold, or it would have been like
Solid, not solid gold. Yeah.
not solid gold.
But someone actually bought it for $800 or whatever.
Oh yeah. Crazy.
And then you had mentioned like the tea light holder. You said that it didn't work out and you no longer sell it. What was the reason why? Like, what was it about it that
Really
made you-
designed. I designed it. It's hard to tell, but I designed it to nest together, interestingly, which it kind of does. So if you bought multiples, you could make some interesting nested shapes with it. But it just, I just didn't like it. You know what I mean? You do something and you're like, this isn't too bad. And you sell a couple of them. You're like, all right, whatever. And then I just didn't like it. So we didn't sell enough to make it worthwhile. And we make a candlestick holder now to replace that. And to be honest, we just weren't selling a lot of tea light holder type of things. So it was a combination of we didn't really sell that many and I didn't like it. And so we keep adding. It's one of the problems with these having people like West Elm and stuff is that twice a year, these shows are twice a year. Twice a year, everyone that you know and do business with is like, what's new? And you're like, oh my God, I just did this show. You know, so I'm under a lot of pressure to continually design and make new things twice a year. So certain things also just have to like go away so that you don't have a million things.
It's a pressure.
It is pressure. Yeah. Yeah, sure. I'm up for anything. Show me whatever you guys got. It's cool.
All right, question next, Emily, please.
We started at the beginning, doing your furniture business. Before we started that, how come you just didn't work for like a Westell? Would that have been like your route?
Maybe most of those companies don't have, they might have a couple of designers, but they don't pay in-house designers. They like have people like one-timing it, or someone famous design this one thing for them that whatever. I also lived in Houston, and it was also, I feel like I have a degree in architecture and no experience. So like, there's no way I would have actually gotten a job. So it was probably a combination of those things. But yes, that would be a great way to do it. Actually get in the business correctly and learn. But which is why I fumbled around for like 10 years and try to figure out what I was actually doing.
Not to insult or anything, but how about Saturday markets?
Oh,
Those-
first Saturday?
Yeah.
Um,
Because I had a friend who lives in Portland and she makes ceramics and she actually makes very interesting form, not like just a glaze or something.
Yeah.
And she had a very good sale, like on one half a day.
We that's how we started off, and it's a great way to do it. I will say that like the two things where you like, for us, we started off our business with wholesale in mind. So we started off wanting to get stores to buy us, and now we're trying to like have more sales generated through our website because we make more money that way. But the two people that make a lot of money initially at like those pop-ups things are ceramicists and jewelry people. If you're not in those two categories, it's harder to grow your own business potentially. I mean, that's just a generalization. So, but at this point in time, if I lived in Brooklyn or something, I would, or LA or somewhere cool, I would do those shows. But in Houston, it just doesn't work for us, and it's not worth our time. Like, I make more money sitting at home, letting people buy stuff off my website than I do.
I have another question online here. Mariana asking if there are dream products you want to design, but haven't get a chance to do it.
Probably, I'd have to think more about it. The interesting thing is like, because of the fact that I can prototype something really quickly, I only have to make, one of the reasons I do concrete in general and we're able to do all these products is because it's inexpensive for me to make one item really nicely, cast a mold of that once, and then I can prototype it out and have one. I can put that on the website. If that never sells, I made one. I don't have to like go somewhere and have made 10,000 made and then attempt to sell it. So it allows me to like play around with like cupcakes and, you know, half a peanut butter jelly sandwich, which I have. And right now I made a waffle trivet, and I made a trivet out of a fabric oven mitt, which is super rad. So, you know, you get to just play around and do whatever you want. And so the things that I dream things would be larger scale things that I wasn't personally able to create. So big stuff, and you know, furniture, a lot, like hundreds. So they slowly degrade. When they're smooth, like the upper right, that's like not terrazzo. If that mold starts getting messed up, I can use it for terrazzo because I'm going to etch the surface off anyway for a while until I have to just throw it away. So I have like maybe 2 lives with them. We're in, so there's this guy named Joe Deal. He owns like 1 million of these things, but you just look around. Ours is in the Sabine Street Studios. It's like on Sabine Street. There's Winter Street, Sabine Street, Silver Street. There's like it's named after streets, and they're all right around like I-10, Taylor, Washington. So it's not cheap, but it's like something we need.
Your studio now?
We we started off and we didn't have any studio, and then we bought a storage unit. We just put some stuff in a storage unit, and then we're like, Nordstrom came along and we're like, well, now we need more space. So we got the studio.
Yeah, I have a question. But I think what you present is very unique. Designer, and you're so close to the market, right? And you get really the individual on the large business, their orders. And I heard you have a couple like surprises. You said, oh, we never thought this one, the instant holder,
Yeah.
the bestseller, and another one. So I'm wondering, based on so many years, your taste, understanding of the market, what's your eye, now you can look at the thing, evaluate. So, oh, this one can be like that one.
I think we have a better idea of whether or not we think it'll be like something that works out. Like the garbage, we all were like, yeah, this is gonna be all right.
You mean those basic?
Those vases, yeah, we call it the garbage collection. The garbage we have is going to be fine. Yeah, the toothbrush holder felt like pretty comfortable that was going to be pretty good. So over the years, yeah, you have a better idea of whether you're wasting your time on stuff. And then there's also things that you do to fill out your store that you might not sell very well, but you just like the way it looks and have it. Right. So even if you don't sell, like we have a large planter, it doesn't sell all that much, but it's a large planter to have. There's a weird time in 2000 during COVID where everyone was selling as many planters as they could possibly sell, and then people got out plantered, or they bought all the planters they needed, and I haven't sold hardly any planters this year. So it's kind of a weird thing.
So the market is really
it changes a lot, yeah.
Predictable.
And we change. Like I say, I spent this year making cupcakes and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and garbage and like a oven mitt out of, it's like I wouldn't have thought that's where I was going to be last year. So, we have a large variety of well-designed, minimal, modern stuff. And now we're throwing in a lot more fun things that get people to talk about it. And having that balance is like important.
We have 3 minutes to take maybe 1 or 2 questions. Yep, please.
How much friction would you say that like you face in terms of like thinking about ideas like your creativity, like, and then even like how does that process look like in it's like like in studio, it's a very person heavy system where you design and then it also kind of gives you feedback. And how would you say like you go about like the whole solution process?
I'm probably not a good example of this. I'm just great at it. No, I design. I mean, I can see things 3-dimensionally in my head. So I've never been a big. I sketch a little bit. I like to like make things in real life and like mess around with shapes that way. And so I generally have like several ideas going on in my head at all times. And whenever I take a break, I pull things off the shelf and like look at it and then put it back. And then something over here might like influence that. So I have like multiple designs going on at all times in my head, and I just like slowly work them through. And then when I'm ready, I'll just start trying to make something. And I can do that because I'm not under a time constraint like you are. So I can just have things kind of constantly going. And if I have weird random ideas, I can just go make it. With my partners, generally speaking, I make it, and if I think it's pretty good, I'll just make it and bring it to them and show them. Because if I give them multiple options, they'll start trying to change things or make changes, and then, which is fine sometimes that's how I do it, but like often I'll just be like, with the garbage, I just brought it in and showed it to them. Like, do you guys like this? And they liked it. So the toothbrush holder, for example, I made 2 different heights, or I made 1 height and then showed them in wood. And then Catherine was like, what if it's taller? And I was like, it doesn't need to be taller. but I made it taller to show her. And then it turned out the first one was fine. So sometimes you have to like make multiple versions of things just to convince everyone that what you did initially was right. Or sometimes it isn't right, like the menorah. My team helped get it to where the final version of it. So it's just, sometimes it's super helpful. Sometimes you have to know when to like just not let other people see it and just do it yourself. Trust yourself. Been doing it enough now where I have a good idea of whether or not what I designed is good or not.